Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Energy transition is an important global issue facing all of us today. And I'm delighted to join the Singapore Energy Summit to share our country, Singapore's perspectives on how we can transition to our low-carbon energy future. As the world economy recovers from COVID-19 pandemic, there is a growing need to relook at how we produce and how we consume energy. Asia, which is expected to drive most of the world's energy demand, has already started its economic recovery trajectory. The International Energy Agency has projected that gas markets in Asia would lead global recovery trends and account for more than 50% of the incremental global gas consumption post-2021. Across Asia, countries are stepping up efforts on energy transition. China has recently announced its commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. And to do that, China plans to add another 800 to 1,000 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2030. This marks a significant step in low-carbon developments in Asia and in the world. In India, the share of renewables in their energy generation has also increased from 17% to 24%, with coal-fired power dropping from 76% to 66%. There was also substantial progress on energy access, air quality, and climate change goals. In Southeast Asia, the ASEAN Centre of Energy has predicted that energy demand would increase by more than 70% between 2020 and 2040. To ensure a sustainable energy future, the 10 countries have agreed to lower energy intensity and grow the renewable portfolio in their energy mix. Within ASEAN, there are also extensive discussions to promote the use of natural gas through a well-coordinated and connected regional gas market. What is Singapore's role? Here, we've embarked on the Singapore Energy Story to strengthen energy resilience and sustainability for our energy future. I think all of us here would have heard Minister Chan Chun Sing this morning in terms of what our roadmap would be, and we have achieved our 2020 solar deployment target of 350 megawatt peak by the first quarter of this year alone. Public agencies such as the Housing Development Board, JTC, and PUB, they're taking the lead to accelerate solar deployment on rooftops and reservoirs in the next few years so that we can achieve the target that was set out for us this morning, the 1.5 gigawatt peak by 2025. We will also continue to work with private sector and research institutes to achieve 2 gigawatt peak by 2030. We are also positioning ourselves to contribute to the growth of sustainable energy in the region. And in particular, we are working with industry partners to facilitate innovative policies and sustainable solutions in areas of research and development, in innovative business models, as well as infrastructural financing. We have encouraged many energy companies to consider Singapore as a living lab for their R&D efforts. For example, ENGIE set up their Green Energy R&D Center of Excellence for Southeast Asia in Singapore in 2016. And in January this year, ENGIE signed an MOU with JTC to explore energy efficiency solutions for industrial buildings in Singapore. On financing energy projects, Infrastructure Asia, a Singapore-based organization set up by Enterprise Singapore and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, has been supporting infrastructural developments across Southeast Asia. Infrastructure Asia is also working with the Asian Development Bank to develop bankable green projects in the region. Over the years, many Singapore-based companies have been steadily ramping up efforts to develop sustainable energy projects in Singapore and beyond. For example, Singapore-based company SIEW has a projected total capacity of 1.7 gigawatt peak worth of renewable energy projects in operation or under construction in the region. And there are more projects expected in China, in Taiwan, in Japan, as well as Southeast Asia. And DBS Bank led the way as the first Asian bank to join the RE100 Global Renewable Energy Campaign in 2017. Today, DBS Bank, led by Piyush, is very active in issuing green bonds. It has underwritten more than 4 billion Singapore dollars of green bonds in 2019 alone to finance sustainable infrastructural projects all across Asia. In May 2020, DBS became the sole lead manager for the National University of Singapore's 10-year 300 million Singapore million green bond issuance, and this is the first of its kind by a university in Asia. Keppel and Sembcorp, they have been very active as well in developing sustainable projects across Southeast Asia. Keppel has unveiled their Vision 2030, which puts sustainability and green developments at the core of their business strategy. And Sembcorp has also been introducing innovations such as Singapore's first renewable energy certificate aggregator platform and providing locally sourced renewable power to Google Singapore. Singapore also plays an active and constructive role in the global discourse on energy transition through multiple fora such as the ASEAN Forum, G20 Forum, and the IEA Forum. Key initiatives in 2020 this year include chairing the drafting committee for the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, APAC, 2021 to 2025. This will drive the region's energy transition for the next 5 years. Participating in the G20 Energy Ministerial Meeting to share our perspectives on energy transitions. And 3, co-hosting the Singapore IEA second Global Ministerial Meeting on system integration of renewables, and this will take place tomorrow afternoon. We are also actively enhancing strategic cooperation with many of our key partners. For example, we've just concluded the bilateral MOU with Australia on low emissions solutions. The MOU will help us develop low emission solutions resulting and including in low carbon hydrogen and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Both countries will also explore cooperation on renewable energy trade and in measurement, reporting, and validation. The partnership to develop and realize low-emission solutions will help both countries with our energy transition and decarbonize the economy. Tapping on regional power grids and electricity imports for cleaner energy is another key switch of our low-carbon energy future. At the 38th ASEAN Ministers on Energy meeting, AMEM, in November next month, Singapore will also be signing the Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore MOU to advance cooperation on cross-border power trading. In addition to the LTMS initiative, we will also be issuing a request for proposal by March 2021 for 100 megawatts of trial electricity imports from Malaysia. The trial will help us to refine our regulatory and technical frameworks to prepare for larger-scale commercial imports from the region in the not-too-distant future, as our demand continues to grow. In conclusion, the energy transition towards a low-carbon energy future presents many challenges, yet it also provides us with multiple opportunities. Multiple opportunities to accelerate our sustainability efforts and to continue to provide resilience and reliability in our quest for a sustainable energy future for Singapore. Singapore stands ready to work actively with our regional and global counterparts, as well as industry players, towards a sustainable long-term energy future for everyone. Thank you very much, and I look forward to robust discussions at our summit today. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Dr. Tan See Leng. He will be back indeed in a short while from now, ladies and gentlemen, for a panel discussion as well. I would now like to invite His Excellency, Dato Sri Setia Dr. Awang Haji Matsuni bin Haji Muhammad Hussein. He is the Minister of Energy, Brunei Darussalam, to deliver his keynote address. Here it is.
Your Excellency, Mr. Chan Chun Sing, Minister of Trade and Industry of Singapore, Your Excellency, Dr. Tan See Leng, Minister, Prime Minister's Office, Second Minister for Trade and Industry, and Second Minister for Manpower of Singapore. Your Excellencies, Ministers, Mr. Frederick Bano, Group Chief Executive Officer of Pavilion Energy, Mr. Nicholas Fang of the Singapore Institute of International Affairs, esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning and warm greetings from Brunei. I'm honored to be delivering this keynote address at the prestigious Singapore Energy Summit 2020 from a distance. I would like to congratulate His Excellency, Mr. Chan Chun Sing, Minister of Trade and Industry of Singapore, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the Energy Market Authority for hosting the Singapore International Energy Week this year in such an innovative way, despite the circumstances that we face. I pray that everyone is staying safe during these times. We would like to offer solidarity with everyone around the globe for the challenges faced with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. It is a stark reminder of the importance of preparedness, adaptability, and concerted effort against uncertainties. Such is the case as we position ourselves for future energy sustainability and resilience. The socio-economic disruption from the COVID-19 pandemic should not deter us in our efforts and ambitions towards a cleaner, sustainable, and greener future. In fact, it should motivate us. It is a chance to lay the foundations for a change we know is imminent and to embed resilience early to better understand unforeseen shocks. The International Energy Agency estimates that primary energy demand in 2020 could decline by 5% compared to last year, but will grow with the future economic and energy landscape. While demand for renewable energy continues to increase gradually, however, overall energy investments are projected to contract even further by 18% by the end of this year. This is where governments have to take a leading role to ensure we continue to navigate towards long-term sustainable energy goals and effective climate action. In Southeast Asia alone, electricity demand has been among the fastest growing in the world, with an average increase of 6% per year as of 2019. Energy demand may continue to pick up as industrial activities resume post-COVID-19 and to support increased energy access for a rising regional population with an average annual growth of 1.6%. The role of cleaner fuels will be critical to balance sustainability with regional needs. Collaboration between the government and industry in policy, technology, and financing will be needed to push forward the energy transition successfully, to introduce incorporation of cleaner alternative fuels into existing and new industries, as well as the overall energy mix. Under the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, natural gas has been identified as an accessible cleaner fossil fuel option to meet regional demand. The importance of gas to fulfill the ASEAN population's needs is underlined by the existing number of regasification terminals in the region. There is a combined capacity of over 38 million tons per annum and 13 transboundary gas pipelines across 6 nations. Globally, liquefied natural gas demand has risen rapidly, and over the next 20 years, it's expected to catch up with oil and coal as the main hydrocarbon component for a more sustainable energy mix. Like other gas producers, Brunei Darussalam stands ready to serve the needs of the region and remains committed to supporting the evolution of lower carbon footprint. There will be around 7 million tons per annum of LNG at Brunei Darussalam's disposal from 2023 onwards, available for customers. Ladies and gentlemen, the IEA has projected that the development of 3 technologies in particular can further accelerate reduction of global greenhouse gas output. These are hydrogen, carbon capture, utilization and storage, and batteries. Making these a reality in our daily lives will hinge on shaping the market to mobilize capital, widespread deployment, and also driving innovation to lower costs. Brunei Darussalam is proud to be part of the global movement towards their development, especially in the field of hydrogen energy. We have been collaborating with Japan in the world's first global hydrogen supply chain demonstration project to test the transportation of hydrogen energy safely using normal shipping under atmospheric conditions. This has involved the transport of over 1,200 tons or 81 ISO containers of hydrogen produced in Brunei, packaged in the form of methyl cyclohexane to Kawasaki, Japan, to be used as fuel for their gas turbines. The project has shown the success of this technology, which was developed under the Advanced Hydrogen Energy Chain Association for Technology Development Consortium. Decarbonization of the power sector alone is expected to achieve about a third of what is required to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050, based on the IEA projections. The remainder is expected to rely on decarbonization of industry, transport, and other sectors. For Brunei Darussalam, this area holds the biggest potential for us as an oil and gas producing nation to reduce our carbon footprint. This year, we launched the Brunei Darussalam National Climate Change Policy, which covers 10 strategic areas that will drive our national climate agenda. A key part of this decarbonization of the oil and gas value chain in order to reduce industrial emissions. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage is an area we're observing closely, while also looking at means to minimize venting and flaring from the oil and gas sector to further reduce emissions. Our oil and gas infrastructure is in a state of maturity. As we renew them, it is an opportunity to introduce more efficient, cleaner technologies that will become more affordable in future. At the same time, the digitalization of our system allows us to operate more effectively and optimally with less wastage while having a better real-time picture to monitor activities, including emissions. Our national climate change policy also involves the adoption of renewable energy. Our journey with renewable energy has primarily been focused on harnessing solar technologies to power rural areas. It is currently leveraged to ensure that everyone in the nation, whether they're connected to the main grid or not, has access to electricity. However, we look forward to the ongoing development of energy storage technologies to increase capacity and duration of supply. As the next step, we will be embarking on a number of small and medium-scale solar projects to determine which configuration works best for us. By 2035, we hope to reduce our energy intensity and increase the total share of renewable energy in Brunei Darussalam's power generation mix. Ladies and gentlemen, Brunei Darussalam is committed to the global transition towards a low carbon economy. At the same time, we want to support access to reliable and affordable energy supply for all. I'm confident that if we can act together, we can increase economies of scale to accelerate the growth of clean technologies and sustainable products. International dialogue and cooperation will be needed more than ever now to ensure long-term energy security and resilience as we face uncertain times. Platforms such as the Singapore Energy Summit play a key role in maintaining the line of sight towards low carbon energy transition as we work towards economic recovery. Brunei Darussalam will be chairing the ASEAN Ministers on Energy meetings in 2021, where we will undoubtedly be working in unison with other ASEAN nations and international partners to address these issues for a cleaner, brighter energy future. Thank you very much.
That's Dato Matsuni coming to us live from Brunei Darussalam. Thank you very much, sir, for that very clear transmission as well. We'd now like to have our next keynote address, ladies and gentlemen. I take pride in inviting up on stage Mr. Frederic Banor, Group Chief Executive Officer, Pavilion Energy, for his address. A round of applause for Frederic, please.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and friends. It's a privilege and honor to be here today and to take part in the first ever hybrid Singapore International Energy Week. It's good to see all of you. Many thanks for EMA for having me today and for organizing such an outstanding gathering. What a year 2020 has been. COVID has shaken the very foundations of our global economies, communities, families, and industries. LNG included. Today, I want to address two things. First, outline the resilience of Singapore energy market in this challenging moment. But second, remind us that despite the rough seas, we continue to look forward and to deliver on our goals, the transition to a low-carbon economy and a valued place for natural gas in that future. The COVID pandemic hit an already oversupplied gas and LNG market with three shocks. First, demand shocks. Lockdowns have impacted energy demand like never before and incited contract disputes, force majeure notices, and cargo deferments by many buyers. In Spain and the UK, where Pavilion Energy has become one of the key players, we have seen a massive drop of 20% of gas demand in the second quarter of this year. Second, price shocks. Disrupted trade flows compounded with extreme volatility. For example, Brent prices moved between $20 and $70 per barrel this year. 20 to 70 and back and oscillating. Third, supply shocks. Many production and upstream disruptions, several force majeures, have added to the cancellation of more than 150 cargoes from US exports because they were non-economic this summer. But overall, we do take comfort that the LNG market, despite those shocks, the LNG market did not break. Nevertheless, LNG has traded this year alone below $2 per MMBTU and recently above $7 MMBTU so far. Brutal, isn't it? But against this challenging backdrop, the Singapore energy market has remained robust and well-balanced. Natural gas supply into Singapore has continued to flow without disruptions or interruption, even as markets worldwide have grappled with issues. As the only LNG and pipeline license importer into the nation, Pavilion Energy is fully committed to its security of supply. And with an enhanced sense of duty in our DNA, we did plan for the worst, making full use of our capabilities, notably ensuring access to flexible supplies at short term, as well as onshore and floating storage of LNG. Let me pause here and praise the excellent cooperation we had with the other licensed LNG importer, Shell, between Shell and Pavilion Energy, alongside SLNG and EMA. I also wish to state the key role of ship owners, such as BW, our partner, who maintain continuity in their supply chains and in cargo and vessel management. Let's also rejoice that Singapore remains a vibrant LNG trading community and a major hub for all of us, the most active, in fact, in the world. Singapore ranks among the top 3 re-exporters of LNG, and Pavilion Energy is very proud to be its main contributor, making Singapore a physical hub and bringing further liquidity into the Asian global market. LNG bunkering projects have also made significant advances. From next year, LNG bunkering vessels of both Pavilion Energy and Fuel LNG will be operational in Singapore. That's fully supported by the government and MPA, and altogether will be ready to provide ship owners with the most efficient solutions. Pavilion Energy continues to invest in expanding our Singapore infrastructure to bring both resilience and flexibility to our home market and to our global business. Let me update you on our global business. We launched our European operations in January and now have 35 people working from Madrid in our offices there. We are one of the top 5 gas marketers in Spain and trade more actively even so in Western Europe. We now import around 10% of all the LNG into Spain and are one of the major players in the Atlantic and Northwest European LNG market through our access into Isle of Grain in the UK and Gate in the Netherlands. Our fleet of 5 LNG carriers under long-term charter, 4 of them being under the Singapore registry, underpin our global trading activities. And even more important now than ever, Pavilion today is a leading financial trader for energy hedging, portfolio optimization, and risk management. What a year 2020 has been. But it's not enough. What does the future look like? Looking forward, the energy transition is more urgent than ever before. As an industry, no more status quo. No more excuses. We must tackle climate change imperative now and with determination. Decarbonization of energy and power generation have become priorities. a stepping stone towards net zero ambitions that many leaders finally put on top of their agenda. Strong pledges are being made by Singapore, by Europe, by China, and today by Japan. Remarkably, and as we've just heard from Brunei, Salam, major producers of fossil fuels are also embracing that challenge. Recently, His Excellency Minister Al-Kaabi spoke about the embedded green planning for the next Qatar LNG expansion, including CCS, solar generation, and the use of LNG-powered vehicles. On his side, let me tell you that Pavilion Energy is pragmatically engaged in the energy transition. We know that natural gas will play a big role in Singapore for the many years to come. Therefore, to reconcile the twin objectives of security of supply with energy transition, we launched the world's first LNG tender with carbon-neutral ambitions. Our tender will be awarded very soon. It will acknowledge the willingness of suppliers to develop with us a transparent methodology for measuring GHG emissions from well to flange. Each cargo of LNG to be imported by Pavilion Energy into Singapore will be accompanied by a verifiable statement of GHG emission that will enable us to plan for facilitating decarbonization as well as carbon offsetting strategies. These ambitions will help promote Singapore as a reference hub for LNG pricing and for carbon pricing and for carbon trading, and for Pavilion Energy to be its main actor. But obviously, such future goes above and beyond any single player. We therefore call on policymakers, academia, and industry to align towards a shared vision and to deliver a pragmatic but forceful timetable of actions. Collaboration is critically important. In conclusion, let me stress again the track record of Singapore energy industry participants in shielding the domestic market from international shocks and ensuring continuity of supply. Let me also tell you that all our staff is very proud of the role Pavilion Energy has been playing. Pavilion Energy is committed to supplying the energy our markets in Singapore, in Spain, and in Northwest Europe need in any circumstances for them to thrive. And as we awake from COVID hangover, greater challenges await us. Our goal as an industry must be to promote the recovery in a sustainable way and to stimulate an accelerated path toward net zero objectives. I look forward to this future of collaboration together. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Banor. It is now time for our panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be inviting our panelists up right now. But before that, first, our moderator. He is Mr. Lim Chi Sung, Managing Director, Utilities Lead, Resources Southeast Asia, Accenture. He's making his way up. As he does, I will invite the rest of our illustrious panel. Dr. Tan See Leng, Minister, Prime Minister's Office, is coming back with us right now. His Excellency Arifin Tasrif, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, Republic of Indonesia. His Excellency Yu Wing Kain, Minister of Electricity and Energy, Myanmar. Ms. Au Ka Peng, Chairman, Shell Companies in Singapore. Mr. Paul Maguire, President and Regional Chief Executive Officer, ENGIE Asia Pacific. Mr. Toshiro Kudama, Chief Executive Officer, JERA Asia. And finally, Mr. Jimmy Koo, Chief Executive Officer, SP Power Grid. Let's welcome them all with a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Dr. Tan, how are you?
on the agenda via the SIEW app. We're all good and settled in. I'm now going to hand over the floor to Mr. Lim, please. Enjoy the session.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Your Excellency, Dr. Tan, esteemed panelists. We have heard this morning about how the global pandemic has significantly impacted the way we lived, the way we operate our businesses, and in the same forum, right, it will definitely shape the way we think about our transition to a low-carbon economy. Emissions have fallen significantly due to the global lockdowns, and we had seen a glimpse of what it will look like in a lower carbon future. But this is only temporary. What we need as citizens of the world is to put our foot on the pedal and continue to accelerate the decarbonization. Decarbonization, as what Dr. Tai has mentioned, in the way we produce, consume, and distribute. We are now, with this as a backdrop, we are now joined with our panelists to discuss today on some of the views of the energy transition. I would first like to invite our guests from overseas. We have with us today His Excellency Arif Tarif from Indonesia and His Excellency Yu Wing Kiang from Myanmar. Mr. Tarif was appointed the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources for Indonesia in October 2018. Prior to his appointment, Minister Tasrif was the Ambassador of Indonesia to Japan from 2017 to 2019. We would like to invite Mr. Tarif to start off the session for us today. Welcome, Mr. Tarif. We have seen in the recent mention that there's initiatives to develop renewable energies beyond the 13% of the potential capacity of 400 gigawatts in Indonesia. Yeah. These are signs and commitments of the direction towards the transition. As an authority in Indonesia, what are your views on the transition for Indonesia and the region?
Thank you. I'm not getting quite clear about the, but I'll try to respond. Yes, Indonesia. Thank you, Excellency Minister and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi. Good morning from Jakarta. Indonesia is in a mission to shift from conventional energy to renewable energy to make sure the transition could run smoothly. Make several programs, followed by monitoring and evaluation to gain information and lesson learned to manifest energy resiliency and security. Like every other country in the world, Indonesia has set targets in developing renewable energy and energy conservation. Targets are mandated through our national energy policy as well as the national determined contribution submitted to the UNFCCC, a committee declared at the COP21 in Paris in 2015. In reaching the targets, regulation and action plans are made and implemented in various subsectors, supported with capacity building and research and development activities. Indonesia also works to apply smarter methods in energy business, making the national energy industry ready to global market for Industry 4.0. The world economy is now facing a challenging time with the COVID-19 outbreak, which has undoubtedly hindered sustainable development and clean energy transition, including in Indonesia. One of the many impacts of the outbreak in the energy sector reflected in the significant decrease on global energy consumption due to the implementation of lockdown and isolation policy. Hence, energy production should be adjusted accordingly and create a new opportunity to enhance productivity. In Indonesia, the energy demand for business and industry is still struggling to reach its normal condition. Indonesia implements clean energy development by several measures, such as increasing renewable energy in the grid system, utilizing solar PV rooftop increasing the utilization of biodiesel through the B30 mandatory program and implementing the mandatory of energy management system for industry and building to encourage energy conservation. CPU-based green fuel project is currently in development and is targeted to be ready for production in 2023. Indonesia is also currently building its first floating solar PV power plant in one of our lakes on top of the site of existing reservoir of hydro power plant. Combination between floating solar PV and hydro aims to mitigate intermittent solar PV while utilizing the surface area of the reservoir from Cirata hydroelectric power plant and does not require any land acquisition. On demand side, government has implemented several programs including mandatory energy management and enforcement minimum energy performance standard on appliances. The government of Indonesia has also updated and adopted the international standard on energy management system, gradually implemented as national standard for industry. Indonesia has partnered with Singapore in developing renewable energy, including cooperation with Solar Energy Investment Pte. Limited and PT Papua Mohaga and Mega Asia Capital Pte. To form a company with PT Nest Indonesia to build solar PV in Papua province. Indonesia also actively participates in developing renewable energy in the Asian region through renewable energy subsector network and renewable energy policy and planning subsector network. As we are working hard to develop renewable energy for a better future, we cannot work alone as energy transition challenges lay ahead of us. International cooperation is needed to support Indonesia to be independent as well as more capable and qualified in the global energy industrial competition. I sincerely hope that forums, studies, and discussions like we are having right now will be useful in opening up our way of thinking in facing various challenges of this energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Tarif. It's good to see that there's a reservoir solar PV projects going on and that Indonesia is very open to welcome foreign investments. Next up, we have live from Myanmar, Minister Yu Wing Kind. Minister Wing Kind is the Minister of Electricity and Energy of Myanmar. He oversees the development and reforms of policies in regards to oil and gas sector. Minister Wing Kind, honored to have you here with us today this morning. We have seen that Myanmar is in a very interesting position with abundance of hydro and wind. Now, there's also been a lot of developments in electrifying the grid, and there's a lot of developments going on at this moment. Definitely a point in time for us to infuse the thinking behind the energy transition. Now, in the similar breath as an authority in this domain, we would like to ask you, how can governments, industries, and the public come together to create our low-carbon energy future?
Good morning. I'm Wing Kind, Minister of Electricity and Energy of the Union of Myanmar. It is my pleasure to be with you today to discuss about our challenges that we face in this unprecedented global health crisis of COVID-19. But we, as a country, and I know as region, we are fighting back. We are doing whatever we can to combat this disease, but at the same time, to make sure our economies will remain and will be prepared for the future when this pandemic proceeds eventually. Regarding the low carbon energy future, our country is entirely in agreement and we are working very hard. Our energy policies have always been based on sustainable energy. At this moment, I can say that our Myanmar energy supplies 50% from hydropower resources and 50% from our domestic natural gas resources. Moving from that, our electricity supply demand is going up. Every year, it's going up about 15 to 19%. So that is a challenge for us, how to improve our supplies, how to generate more electricity, and most importantly, looking into the sustainable energy future. Which energy mix should our country be looking forward to? I'm glad to say that during the past 3 years, our government have embarked on the sustainable energy policies. While we rely on our traditional sources of energy such as hydropower and domestic production of natural gas, we are also supplementing, augmenting with LNG, because LNG as a clean fuel and as a global market player, we believe that using LNG as part of our generation mix will be sustainable for our future energy requirements. So that is why in the past year, we have added more than 1,000 megawatt into our system based on LNG to power projects. While in the meantime, we have awarded contracts for the next 4 or 5 years to bring more LNG to power plants into our country. We hope by 4 or 5 years time from now, we will be having about 4,000 megawatt generated by LNG. And that is one of the key difference from previous policies that we have managed to embark on. On another important note, we have already started our projects for utilizing abundant solar energy in our country, especially in the central part of our country. We have recently awarded contracts for 30 solar power plants located across our country, which in totality will generate more than 1,000 megawatts from solar power. So this is an important milestone for our country. Once all these solar plants are in operation by mid-2021, solar energy will contribute about 14% of our energy needs, based on an installed capacity of around about 8,000 megawatts, which is expected by mid-2021. While discussing about the sustainable energy needs, Myanmar is still a developing country. We are trying very hard. We still have almost 40% of our country still unconnected to the national grid. So that is one of the important priorities for our government and for our ministry to fulfill also. At this moment, I can say that we have fulfilled about 55% of the country being connected to the national grid. We hope, and we are trying our best to achieve 75% by 2025. In doing so, we will be also using various generation mixes, as mentioned just now, hydropower, our domestic natural gas resources, using imported LNG, and also, most importantly, inclusion of solar power in our generation mix. And as I mentioned just now, which will contribute a significant 14% of our installed capacity. While we are doing this, we are also in discussion with our neighboring countries for interconnection of the electricity networks, for power trade. And we have consistently following the ASEAN PPG, ASEAN Power Grid objectives and way forward, and we are working on these also. So, in conclusion, I'd like to say that Myanmar, as a responsible member of ASEAN and also as an Asian country, we are trying our best to improve the standard of living of our country, the people, our citizens, and to enable them to get access to electricity with our final goal of achieving 100% electricity accessible to all our citizens in the country. And I hope that this meeting will also contribute of the sharing of knowledge, of sharing of information, and also having the insights of all the delegates and all the participants who will be participating. And I also wish to best wishes to all our panelists for their good health and for their happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Bringing it closer to home, Dr. Tan. Yes. There is a question that there's a perspective that a successful energy transition must be primarily supported by the government and the public sector. How important is it in Singapore that the industry is also involved?
Well, thank you for that question. It's a very insightful question. I would say that for a small country like Singapore, obviously, in terms of the space, in terms of the ability to go on many of these renewable energies, we are quite challenged. So it is actually absolutely crucial and critical for industry, for the government to work closely in partnership with industry, with the private sector, with academia, including institutions of higher learning. So we hope that by this close partnership, this close collaboration, we can actually create a platform for many of them to come together to develop innovative ideas and to test bed many of these ideas, to commercialize them, and then to eventually export them to all over the world. I think one very poignant example of this is really, if you look at it on a smaller scale, I think there was a 60 megawatt peak floating photovoltaic sort of cell deployment at the Tengah Reservoir. By developing this, the companies, the consortium that came together to develop this can actually test bed it in Singapore in terms of acclimatizing it to the high humidity, the high levels of humidity, and the warm temperatures that you operate within the country itself. If they're able to adapt and do it well, then obviously the model can be adapted overseas and to many, many other operating countries all over the world. Another aspect of this kind of collaboration is in the Energy Open Innovation Challenge, where this is led by ESG, Enterprise Singapore Group, working very closely with Shell, with Chevron, with ConocoPhillips, and also with ExxonMobil. We hope to use this as a platform to create tie-ups between major energy players with our local startup scene with small, medium enterprises to see how we can bring them together to create an ecosystem for them to co-develop, co-create smart, innovative solutions in terms of how they can do asset management, in terms of looking at longer-term sustainability, even using robotics, and to smoothen out sometimes the fluctuations in terms of the consumption and also the supply of electricity and power through the grid. So these are some examples of the benefits of working together between government, between industry, between the private sector and also academia.
Thank you, Dr. Tan. I mean, it's definitely very important to have all the different agencies come together to co-innovate.
Yes, certainly.
Next, we have Jimmy. Quick introduction. Jimmy was a Brigadier General before joining the SP Group, and previously he headed the SP Business Ventures, and subsequently was appointed the CEO of Singapore District Cooling before assuming the role of CEO of SP Power Grid. Jimmy, we all understand the renewables plays a big part in this whole transition ecosystem, right? And Singapore Power Grid is known for many other things for its reliability. So in this energy transition, what do you think is the role of the power grid? And how do we continue to ensure energy security and resilience as we move to this new ecosystem?
Thanks, Jason. Let me just talk a bit about the larger SP group. The group, as an energy company, is fully committed to a low-carbon future. I'll just mention two aspects in terms of the directions that we're going. One is borrowing the Minister's Chan's frame. One area is living green. So the group has been pushing for many living green solutions, be it rolling out electric vehicle charging stations, be it in district cooling, where we are operating one of the world's largest district cooling systems in the Marina Bay. There you are saving 30% energy in providing chilled water and cold energy for air conditioning, which is a big energy guzzler. Be it even creating a platforms for renewable energy certificates. Recently, we launched a personal REC where individuals, through customers, through the SP app, you can actually buy a renewable energy certificate and contribute to sustainability. So a range of things in living green, and I won't speak too much about it. The second is to build on the Minister's Chan's frame. Actually, I would add that SP is also enabling green. So this is the power grid, right? Now, very often you hear about renewables, electric vehicles, then this is the technology part. But to make it happen, the power grid has to enable it. Without the power grid, especially in countries or cities like Singapore, where reliability is a big piece of the consumption of electricity, all the sustainability, all the low-carbon future cannot be properly enabled. So this is a very important thing that SP is looking at in order to enable the low-carbon future. I'll just mention a few things that the power grid is looking in terms of enabling green while watching the reliability. One is that you really need to understand the technology and to build the competency to manage electric vehicles, to enable it with energy storage. All the new energy comes with opportunities and challenges. So we have been doing various trials of various sort, piloting systems, looking at energy storage of various sizes, looking at electric vehicle electrification, understanding the nature of charging. In fact, this is a key area because recently I read that the UK power distributors are demanding for control over switching off electric vehicles, should there be a peak demand, because electric vehicle can affect the power grid's reliability. And in Singapore, while the grid is very robust, still it is not a trivial matter, because each vehicle is, in terms of charging, the peak is 7 kilowatt, which is almost the same as a HDB household. So imagine if 650,000 vehicles all turning electric vehicles turning into electric vehicles by 2040, we're talking about large numbers, right? How do you enable this so that we don't end up with a situation like the UK, right? So the electric vehicles, understanding electric vehicles, understanding solar panels. We've deployed solar panels of our own in our substation. So a range of things to understand the technology and also to be able to build competency. Second area is actually to look at the control systems and the digitization. This is important because how do you manage the entire system? You really end up managing it through digital controls to balance the grid. And the grid, power grid is actually a very finely balanced system. Right? For this, we are looking at deploying and operate a pilot system called the DERMS, or Distributed Energy Resource Management System, next month, and probably deploy full operational by February, an initial system. Now, with this, you can start to have visibility of the DER systems in the country, and then potentially to control, to manage it. So this is the basic system we're looking at. We are looking at deploying a more advanced system, working with NTU. Together with this, in the back end, we are digitalizing all the forms data, so that is another big enabler. The third point is actually working with, like the Second Minister said, actually working with partners, right? With government, with research institutes, because the power grid, or in fact, the entire energy system is will go through a major transformation that we have never seen before since the establishment of the grid infrastructure from Edison and Tesla's day. So this will be very complicated, and I think how the power grid and the energy system will evolve is really going to be something that all the players in the ecosystem need to work together to evolve the new grid. So SP very committed to a low carbon future, but we are doing a lot in order to enable this future.
Thank you, Jamie. The power grid definitely continues to play a very important role in the transition for the low carbon future. Next up, Paul. Paul is actually no stranger to this industry. Paul was formerly the CEO of Simply Energy Australia, before he landed his onshore to take over as CEO of Senoko Energy, and is now residing as the President and CEO of NG Asia Pacific. Paul, NG is progressive in making pivots towards the innovation of this transition. With NG Ventures, NG Impacts, there's a lot of momentum and focus in this space. From your experience, what are some of the key challenges and opportunities that you have come across?
Okay. So maybe firstly, the way to put this in context is NG as an organisation has a purpose, a mission, a raison d'etre, as the French would like to say, which is to accelerate the transition to a carbon neutral economy. So for us, that involves participating, co-creating with customers, whether they be governments, whether they be corporations, whether they be individuals, solutions orientated around the energy transition. And generally, when we look at the energy transition, we see the opportunities really in three spaces, 3 Ds, you might call it. So decarbonisation is a huge opportunity. We're strong believers that if you look at the supply of electricity into the future, there's going to be more and more low CO2, more and more zero CO2 ways of producing the energy that we consume. As an organisation, we added 3,000 megawatts of renewable generation to our portfolio in 2019. We're on the way to achieve the same in 2020, and we're actually targeting 4,000 megawatts per annum after that. So we see decarbonisation and working with governments and customers as a key way of achieving that ambition. The other thing we see, and you heard it from the Minister earlier today, is decentralisation is going to be a strong aspect of the energy transition. So in terms of opportunities there, what we see is a number of things. People who, in their homes, in their businesses, on warehouses, on manufacturing facilities, they're very interested in being prosumers, creating their own energy. So what we're doing is we're working closely with these people to help them produce their own energy, and in parallel, helping them meet the sustainability goals that they've set for themselves as a corporation. We're also doing other activities in terms of distributed energy in places like Myanmar, where we partner with local companies and provide access to energy to remote villages who are not connected to the grid, but need a microgrid, a renewable microgrid, to help grow their local economy and actually act as a transition before the grid expands to actually meet them. I think the last thing I'd mention is we've heard a lot about the intermittency of renewables and battery storage. We think that's going to be a very fast-growing sector. We think the cost of battery storage is very much going to go the way of solar panels and significantly come down the cost curve to make it a very cost-effective solution in combination with intermittent generation to deliver renewable energy solutions to countries, to communities in general. And the last thing I'd say we're working on is really digital, would be the third D. If you've got, for example, lots of distributed energy producing devices, it's nice if you've got some software which can somehow aggregate them all and deliver the benefits that they create to the market. And that's why you see companies like us testing virtual power plant technology that actually aggregates these energy generating devices to deliver benefits, deliver power to the system when it's needed, but to also help keep the system safe, reliable and stable. So I think they'd be the key areas when it comes to NG that we're focused on for the energy transition.
Thank you, Paul. The 3Ds definitely poses its challenges as well as opportunities. But we will look forward to seeing what NG has in the future in this space. Thank you for your patience, Kai Ping and Budamasan. The next question goes out to Kai Ping. Kai Ping was formerly the CEO of Singapore Tourism Board and has joined Shell in 2012. She is now sitting as the chairman of the Shell companies in Singapore. Shell has published in the recent energy transition report in their plans to continue to improve electrifications with renewables focusing on efficiency, getting more energy with less emission. The aim is to be more sustainable and circular. Right? So how does energy transition and a low carbon look like in your sense for Shell and Asia?
Well, thanks for having me. So when you talk about energy transition in Shell, let's put some perspective into that, right? Shell is about 3% of the total world energy system. So we're not a small company, but it also means that there are a lot of opportunities available to us. In the midst of COVID, we actually decided that we have to recommit ourselves to energy transition and to getting to net zero by 2050, because we felt it was so important. We started our energy transition journey a few years ago, and COVID has simply reinforced for us the importance of not just getting there, but getting there faster. If I would turn my attention then to what we are doing in Singapore in particular, we're trying to act now. We're not going to wait. And by acting now, here are a couple of examples of what I mean, right? So in Singapore, we have actually an outsized energy and chemical sector. And what I mean by outsized is this. You know, Singapore has got, what, 6 million people? 5.7, 5.8, almost 6. That's no more than 0.09% of the world's global population. And yet, we have 1.5% of global refining capacity. We just make that comparison. So we know as Shell that we've been a very big part of how the Singapore energy system and chemical industry has developed over the decades. So how are we going to change that? Because it's both a huge challenge as well as a huge opportunity given the hub role that Singapore has. So when we say we act now, well, it's everything from how we change the way we run our operations, how we bring our customers along with us on that journey, and how we take the steps to make that real to everybody. So, you know, we've embarked on a digitalization journey for Bokom, which actually today houses the biggest Shell refinery in our, fully owned Shell refinery in our system. Now, obviously, that's going to change how we operate our entire refinery. Bringing our customers along with us. When we put an EV charger in our retail station, and we now have 100 charging points, not just at retail sites, but at different locations, how would the customer interact with that? You know, what behaviors do they have to change? How do we help them think about the way that they're going to have to wait for that car to get charged up, right? So there's a whole myriad of issues that we have to work through, but it's so important that we bring our customers with us. And I think, you know, acting now simply gives us a lot of the learnings that we can build on, and more importantly, in future, you know, taking that learning and scaling it, because we've got to be economically competitive and viable, not just at a pilot level, but we've got to be able to scale. And in Shell, you know, that matters a lot. So, you know, I think just now there were one or two examples that both ministers have mentioned that Shell is involved in. The recycling of plastic waste. We have an ambition to recycle 1 million tons of plastic waste in our system in 2025, or by 2025. That's massive. That's all the plastic waste that the whole Singapore generates. So, you know, it's going to take a lot of effort for us to get there. We've started off the feasibility study with NEA in Singapore. But that's just step one. The important thing is to get it to scale in a way that is viable. So hopefully just sharing some ideas.
No, thank you, Kathy. It's definitely very important. I think you raised a valid point that we need to bring our customers along the journey. Right? They are finally the end users of whatever they were trying to achieve. Now, arriving at our next esteemed panelist, Kuduma-san. Kuduma-san is a well-represented figure in this global energy arena. He joined TEPCO in 1982 and have had stints in TEPCO Washington, IEA Paris, before joining JERA in 2016. Kuduma-san now is residing in Singapore as the CEO of JERA Asia. Kuduma-san, JERA's published mission statement mentions a focus in 2 areas. The first area is on LNG value chain business, and the second on large-scale renewable energy business. The strategy is to integrate stable LNG generation with intermittent renewables. Now, in this model, what is your view on Asia energy trends and the role of the grids as well as industry partners like JERA?
Okay, Lim-san, thank you very much. I would like to share with you 3 points. Yes. First, as for Asian energy trends, we should keep in mind that Asian economic growth is the most robust in the world for coming decades. And ASEAN is the growth center of the world economy. Therefore, we need sufficient and economical energy to support our growth. For example, in Asia, if you look at Bangladesh, the economic growth is expected 8% annually, and electric demand is growing 10%. However, they don't have enough coal fuel to be fueled, almost nothing. And they're supplied by 50% is supplied by domestic gas, but it's depleting. And 40% depend on imported expensive heavy oil. That is why the country is seeking for the coal-fired power plants to, say, installed to support the economy. Now, Asian countries need sufficient energy to grow. And therefore, compared with Europe, Asian countries should have the different approach from that of Europe. I think the challenges are required to all the Asian countries, both enhancing economic growth as well as to reduce CO2 emissions. This is the first thing I'd like to say. Second, in the long run, I think of course, I believe renewables to prevail. However, if we look at it now, still renewables are a very small percentage and are causing troubles to total energy system, especially power grid, because of its nature of fluctuations and intermittency. So in this context, as you said, much closer collaboration between distribution and power grid network is necessary to enable the VPP, virtual power plant, and enhance the renewables to come. So it's very important to do that. So I think intermediate term, as my colleague said, in the mid-term, before storage system to come in market, say 10 to 20 years, to cover up renewable energy's weakness, cleaner energy, like energy, will play a key role in the future. Yes, we estimate in ASEAN region, in 10 years, 60 million tons. Here in Singapore, 6 million tons will be added for the consumption of energy. So it's almost tripled in 10 years. So energy is coming. Highly efficient gas combined cycle will supplement the electricity supply, and this combination will be one of the effective solutions to complement the renewables. This is the second point. Yes, time is limited, sorry. The third point, the last one, to reduce CO2 emissions in the long run, it is very important to consider converting existing assets into green. Yes, I think it's very important to utilize already invested assets with greener fuel like ammonia or hydrogen in the future. Investment in these new technologies are very essential for us to meet the long-term goal. So lastly, we, JERA, have launched the roadmap for zero CO2 emissions towards 2050. And we have already decided to shut down inefficient coal-fired power plants by 2030. And we will achieve zero CO2 emissions through a combination of renewables and greener thermal power generation. It is a long way to go, but JERA is prepared to work together with Singapore people and ASEAN countries to seek for optimal solutions. That's my message. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kudo-san. It's definitely important to look at your work around VPPs to stabilize the grid. Thank you, everyone, Dr. Tan. In summary, I think if I could summarize in one sentence, we definitely need to co-innovate, co-develop as ecosystems towards our journey for net zero. So thank you very much, everyone, and hope you have a good event for the rest of the day. Thank you.